Welcome to the Rogue L&D podcast, allowing you to meet some of the brilliant folk driving people performance and development forward in an informal and human way. My name's Tom Bailey, award-winning L&D leader and passionate maverick for all things development. Join me as I ask questions of some of the industry's most innovative and interesting people. Okay, well, welcome to the Rogue L&D podcast. I am delighted to invite Nigel Harrison on today, someone who I have looked up to and someone whose model I have used extensively and evangelized extensively as well. If you ever listen to me talk, I will always talk about performance consulting and particularly Nigel's model. But before we get into that, Nigel, it's a pleasure to have you here. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. Thanks for inviting me. I am a psychologist, but I started life as a training manager with an initial degree. And that's where I came across lots of clients asking me for instant solutions. And I felt under pressure. I couldn't believe that they would then blame the training department when people wouldn't go on courses. And I thought, well, this isn't right. Yeah. I then joined an American consulting firm and was trained as an instructional designer. And in the evenings, I went to Birkbeck College and did my master's degree in occupational psychology. And that's where I discovered the work of Mager and Pipe about performance technology. And I had an aha moment one day when I realized this is it. We need to talk about performance, not about training. Training is a solution. And really the next sort of 40 years, I've been coaching and training people on how to ask questions to uncover the performance gaps behind these requests for training. And then I realized it's not just training, it's any request for HR, sack someone, recruit someone. And then we started working with IT. We need a new system because all of those things are solutions. They're not the problem. And then I got fascinated in why people jumped so quickly to the solution and avoid analysing the problem, the diagnosis, I think, which is a very human thing. I think we jump very quickly. I eventually moved back to Sheffield and started an instructional design company. But the basis of that, our front end, was always we did proper analysis of the problem. And then we sold that about 20 years ago. And I've been working on my passion, which is helping and coaching people in performance consulting. I have a number of associates, all my ex-clients, people who are advocates who use the approach, have used it for at least 10 years. And we coach people all over the world in how to ask those questions of your client.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's me, Tom.
And you're being incredibly modest. You have 2 books as well, which people can actually purchase on Amazon.
Well, I've got... I started publishing books on instructional design from McGraw-Hill. And the front end of that is how do you ask performance analysis questions. And then I sent a book to Kogan Page. I wrote one for them on improving employee performance. And they came back and said, can you do one on performance consulting? So these are my latest books.
Perfect, yep.
They've got thinner and thinner. Because it's just the fundamentals. We use these as the basis of the coaching. Yeah, how to be a true business partner by performance consulting. And then the next one is how to deal with power and manipulation.
That's incredibly interesting.
Yeah, because we found that when I do the reviews, people can use a logical approach, but then they say, but what about the difficult clients? So we've got sort of 2 elements to what we do. We train people in a trust-based approach, which works in most cases, and then we help people cope with manipulative people using it. Well, to tell you, I just give you the answer. You have to switch to a negotiation strategy. So the 2 books, you can get them on my website. They're very designed to be read in 20 minutes, but they're sort of a little handbook to have.
And you mentioned the piece around switching to negotiation, which in itself is really interesting, and there's so much to dive into with you. So I want to make sure I cover it all off. But how often do you think you switch into that mode? If, let's say, the average L&D manager who's managing various requests, some of which are plausible and maybe some of which are, below the line, a bit less credible. How often do you think that in that situation we would have to negotiate?
Not often. If you're skilled at building rapport and asking performance consulting type questions. Because you can turn around most of your clients, who I call innocent manipulators. They're very busy and they do the normal human thing of jumping to conclusions. Like, we need to train these people. So if you imagine a busy manager, they'll be thinking, I've got all these different complex things on my mind. We need a new IT system. We need to get those guys trained in resilience. We need to get rid of that guy. We need to bring in some more engineers. Now, all those four on their busy desk are solutions. They're not problem analysis. And they then bring in their specialists, and the IT person says, yeah, I'll take that away from you. I'll take that away from you. And it's really good they get the problem off their desk by giving a problem to somebody else to create an instant solution. So that innocent manipulation of saying, I haven't got time to talk about this, just train them, you can turn those around. They're not being deliberately manipulative. They're just working fast.
Yeah, it's almost like a conditioning. If everyone's been on training, everyone's been to school in some respect, and so therefore they're conditioned to think, oh, it's all training, isn't it? It's all I just need some training. I just need a classroom learning or a virtual learning event or even an e-learning, whatever it is. But if you just take that order, which is always so tempting in our industry, and we've been talking about this for a while, there's no value being added by anybody. It's an unqualified recommendation because a line manager just thought, well, 20 years ago, I did some training. It was really good. The sandwiches were great. So for this resilience training, or my favorite, I do quite like resilience training requests, but also presentation skills is another one. It's catch-all. Nobody's qualifying it. So if we don't add value at that point as learning and development managers, or dare I say it, performance managers, who else is going to do that?
Exactly, because it's the human condition to jump to fast solutions. So I don't think it's deliberately manipulative. We all do it. We need a new car. We need a new dishwasher. You don't think, hang a minute, shall I investigate the dishwasher? It's hard work, or we bring in a specialist. And that's where we can help people. So the first thing we need to do is get in rapport with that person because they think they've found a solution. And if you say, no, hang on, it might not be training, you get pushback. So you need to go along, and what I recommend you do is repeat the same request. Oh, right, you need to train people in resilience. Repeat it and use the same sort of energy that the person's given you so that you don't get the pushback. Then we do a lot of work on very clever little questions at this front end. And what I recommend is concentrate on keeping that rapport and then ask questions like, okay, resilience training, what would we see people doing if this resilience training is successful? And then you can and right over to start to think about performance. So there's a number of tricks you can use. It's all about building rapport and helping the client break away from that simplistic view of a solution. And then, the original question is, how many do I think you have to switch to a negotiation? It's only if you can't turn that client around and they keep saying, no, don't ask me questions, just do it. And keep doing that and try to use their power, then you have to switch and think, hang on a minute, this joint problem-solving approach isn't working. I need to negotiate with them now. And I would assume that's only 2-3% of the population.
It does feel like...
But maybe 60% came in asking for an instant solution. But you've turned most of them around.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like you're failing if you move into negotiation. Nothing wrong with negotiation, but it feels like you haven't quite won the battle to win them over on adding value. They're resolute. They're just... I don't care what you're talking about. Just give me the e-learning or whatever it is.
Yeah. You can turn most of those people around because you pick up their energy and say, oh, right, the e-learning, tell me more about what would it look like when people have done the e-learning? And say it with the same amount of energy that they've got for the solution. Yeah. And when they say, I haven't got time, you say, how much time have you got? And you sort of use their energy. Yeah. It's the Aikido technique,
yeah, no, it's good. I like it. Now, look, it would be remiss of me before we dive into this, and I would get carried away. For the listeners, it would be helpful just to give an overview of your model, which I know is available online.
Yeah, the best thing to do is just look at my website, but fundamentally, it's 7 steps, but you can break those down into 3 key steps. So the client approaches you asking for resilience training. First thing to do is to build rapport, listen, and we draw a system diagram of the people involved in resilience training. So sometimes called the who's involved map. So the first stage is opening up the problem by drawing out all the key players involved in the problem. And that gets over the first assumption that they need training, because we get in their colleagues, they get in the client themselves on the diagram. So we draw a system diagram. That's the main first phase. After we've opened up the problem and really listened to the client and got an idea of their world through drawing this diagram, we then move on to the gap analysis. And we say, where are we now? Where do we want to get to? What's the cost of doing nothing about this gap? The performance gap analysis really reveals the underlying causes of the problem. That's the second phase. Well, the first phase is what we now know where the problems are and how much they cost. We say, what are the causes of these problems and what are potential solutions and action and what action can we take? So it's fundamentally three phases. Let's open up the problem by drawing a system diagram, do the performance gap analysis, then look at causes and solutions.
One of the things I really like about your model, because I'm sure you've been around learning and development teams long enough to know that we struggle with measures at the best of times, or we think about it after the event, is you're already thinking about the measure at the very start. So that gap that you talked about, that's the currency that we're using. And so that's whether it works or not, whether we address that particular gap, and it gives us the currency that we're working, whether that's hours or money or whatever. And I think that's a really key point about the model. That it's brilliant because it sets all that out for you, and it's such a key practice for us to get right.
That's the big thing that learning and development people find new, is asking questions about, well, tell me about what people are doing now. How do we know we're doing that? What are we measuring? And what would you like to see them doing? And so the client will be giving you their KPIs, their sales figures, their wastage figures. And they often say, why am I telling you this? You're from training. I say, well, actually, we need to know from training what the performance gap is so we can work out what's it worth investing in to try and close this gap. That's the big thing that L&D people sort of find new, is talking about performance gaps and quantifying performance gaps. Once you've done that, it's the secret, because you've got, as you say, you've got the data for evaluation. You don't evaluate whether the training's happened. You evaluate whether the performance they want to see has happened. And in order to do that, you need to have asked the client in the first place what it was he wanted to see.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this morning that Donald Trump has jumped to a solution, or maybe with Netanyahu's help. He said, we need to bomb Iran, which is a solution. It's not the problem.
Yeah. I love that you brought Trump in as the example. I mean, it's a great example. Yeah, there is no planning.
Imagine if Pete Hesketh had been a performance consultant.
Yeah.
What he would have said was, yes, bomb Iran. He's repeated what Trump asked for. And then he would say, what would we see happening after the bombing has been successful?
Yes, absolutely.
And then if Trump said something like, they wouldn't have a nuclear program, we'd see regime change. So he's now getting the goals out, which have always been very vague.
Yes.
Then Hesketh could have said, well, no nuclear program, we're negotiating that at the moment, let's work on that.
Yeah.
And regime change, he could have said, well, the guy's 80 years old, let's work on that or wait.
Yeah.
Other solutions to the goals. But I think Trump was played by Netanyahu to go straight to a solution. Yeah. Let's bomb them. Yeah, we're strong enough, we can bomb. And appeal to his narcissism. And that happens in business, sack these people, recruit these people, train these people is the solution.
Yeah.
And if you don't ask questions about what they're intending to achieve, you can get blamed for not delivering the solution. Yeah.
I've never had the problem where this has become the Rest is Politics podcast, but I do feel like we're moving in that direction. But it's a great point, because if just to play it back, as you say, if they had taken your model and used a performance consulting mindset, they probably wouldn't have ended up in a bombing campaign. They probably would have looked at diplomacy. They probably would have looked at levers that they can pull that don't involve bombing folk. But again, there wasn't that approach, which it's a great example. I would urge the listeners to think about this. Next time someone comes to you and says, can we run that resilience program, or can we run that X program? Think of this example. Don't do a Trump. Don't start bombing Iran because someone tells you to.
Are you Peter Hesketh and just say yes, so we can do that?
Yeah, but you're not adding any value. That's the problem. Look, I'm really conscious that. So I first heard you years ago and I know I name drop him all the time, but the excellent David James L&D podcast, and you were on one of the first episodes, which was a brilliant episode. Really enjoyed it. I'm going to probably get in a lot of trouble for saying this, but having reflected on your model, the thing that I've found I do less, and in fact I'm really anti, and this is really going to annoy some real old guard L&D folk. For me, it makes learning needs analysis and training needs analysis completely irrelevant. I'm really sorry to say that. You could use it down the road. If you've now identified it as a training issue, fine.
There's no such thing as a training needs analysis.
Because you're starting with training, right?
Training doesn't have any needs.
Exactly.
People have needs to do something differently. And training is just one possible solution. So there's no such thing as a training needs analysis.
But you're starting at that point where you go, we already know it's a training problem. So before we look at the issue, we already know we're bombing Iran. So before we look at what we're trying to do, we're there.
Yeah. It's the only way it is. Sometimes if you get issues of development, for example, you're recruiting new supervisors and they all need to do supervisory basics 1, or everybody needs to do safe working practice to go before they go on the site. In that case, it's that's perfectly appropriate to say, those are prescribed training, and we have 3 new engineers, so they need to go on it. I mean, that's fine. But if somebody comes to you and says, we need to train our team on resilience, that's not...
No. I mean, what does that even mean? That's the issue I have with it. I mean, what do we mean by resilience? And
but the front end, I mean, Americans call it front end analysis, and that's what performance consulting is. It's just a front end analysis of asking the questions about the performance gap. And that's what, instead of a training needs analysis, you do a performance needs analysis. And that is the front end of any instructional design or any solutions, including IT and HR solution. What's the problem? Problem analysis.
Yeah. Well, look, listen, thanks for ruining those 2 models that folks adore keenly, but also thank you for ruining it and for opening my eyes, and I'm sure you will open other people's eyes, because this is fundamental to L&D practice, I believe. Certainly here in Australia, we need to see more of it. We need to see that value adding. It's the age-old problem. We've been talking about this for at least 10 years. But are we here just to provide training, or are we doing a Pete Hegseth and just providing whatever the person wants, regardless of adding any value? Or do we actually have our own specialism where we're adding value and driving performance change, behavior change in organizations? And if it's the first one, let's not bother. But you're probably going to be out of a job as soon as times get hard and the budgets are squeezed.
Yeah. The good thing is, I mean, to me, training is about the knowledge and skills part of any performance solutions. And usually, to move a group of people from where they are to somewhere else, there's a knowledge and skills element. There's always a motivational element, and there's always environmental factors. So usually when we do the analysis, we split this out and say, okay, incentives, you need to work on those. The line manager takes those. Changing the environment slightly, bringing new tools, you need to work on those. But knowledge and skills, we need to get them up to speed to the standard, to a new standard. That's where the training professional comes in. And we'll do that part of the performance gap. And so normally to bring someone up to a different level of performance, there is new knowledge and skill to be acquired. And so don't despair, there usually is a training element. The important thing is in the initial conversation to split out the different elements that will help improve performance and share them with your client. And that's one of the reasons, ways you become a trusted partner, because you leave the meeting saying, right, you do that and we'll do this. So you're a partner. You haven't walked away as an order taker saying, yeah, we'll do it all, we'll train them. Training isn't a total solution.
We could keep going on that all day. That's the problem. And I think people are probably bored of me saying it. But I want to dig into the fact that you're a chartered psychologist and you have a background, obviously, in psychology. And for me, it seems really obvious. It's something that we don't talk about a great deal in learning and development, but yet we spend a lot of time, especially things like human-centered design, thinking about how individuals will engage, how they're going to consume things, how they're going to interact with certain touch points. How have you used your psychology experience in your practice?
I use it with coaching L&D and HR people. Instead of thinking about the needs of the learner, we use our understanding of people to understand the needs of the client. And how, so if you've done anything on rapport building, any NLP, a client comes into you and is anxious and says, I need this. How to get in rapport with that person. And we do a lot of giving feedback on internal consultants, how they interact with their own clients. For example, to avoid pushback, to use the same language, to use the same tone of voice. We also, once we've moved on from that, helping the client uncover the real issues behind their request is to do with listening, active listening, asking short open questions. And the big thing is quietening your own inner voice, the one that's saying, they're asking me for a solution, I haven't got one. They're more powerful than me. And then finally, it's dealing with manipulative, powerful people, how to manage yourself and the tactics you use to deal with people maybe more powerful than you. A lot of L&D people are set up to deal with line managers who have more status and more power than them. So I use my psychology to help my clients on understanding themselves and how they interact with their clients. I mean, I think traditional L&D, we tend to look at, how do we look at the learners? And because you miss the fact you have to engage with your clients. That's where I find the psychology most useful is, how to manage your clients.
And so obviously the psychology of managing clients. Is there anything that, because I think most L&D managers or most L&D practitioners don't have a background in psychology. Apologies if you do, listening. Well done, you. But most of them don't. Are there any kind of bits of advice you would give just to kind of appreciate the psychology of either the learners or, as you say, the clients that you're working with? Or even something you would recommend that they all go and do, even if it's just read up about neurolinguistic programming, for example? Yeah,
NLP is really good for rapport building. Seeing the world the way the client sees it. Try and get out of your own view when a bossy client tries to push you and say, we need resilience training. To try and quieten your own inner voice and think, what are they interested in? And that, think they are busy, they just want to get this off their desk. And to use that technique of drawing a diagram with them or of the people involved. So tell me about who you want resilience training for. And who do they work with? And what do these guys do? Who do they work for? And when you ask that question, you get the client on the diagram. And then by opening up that picture of their world, if you can do it with them, you start to see the world the way they see their world. And if you can get them saying, yeah, you're right, I've got these 17 engineers here and these 3 in Hong Kong, they're a pain. And if you can pick up on that word, they're a pain, in what way? Then you've got it, because you've got in rapport. And the secret is to try and see the world the way they see it. And the trick is draw a diagram with them, or draw it yourself. Draw an organisation chart. Say, just remind me, how many engineers? You said you had 3 in Hong Kong. You've got a couple in Asia. You've got 12 in Europe. And just get interested and enthusiastic and curious about their world until they start to feel they can share their view of their world. And that's the secret. Because once you get them to trust you enough, and you do it by listening and this trick of drawing a joint diagram, you can start to work on gap analysis, which implies that they're going to share things with you. So, concentrate on that first starter conversations on rapport building and seeing the world the way they see it. And don't try and do too much challenge, and don't try and do too much on solutions.
Yeah.
And I think people overlook that. To get, you can't go into solutions, you can't go into challenging investigation until you've got enough rapport and you see the world like the client sees it. And it's just the same in your personal life. If you have an accident in a car park and there's a dent in your car, the first thing you need to deal with is that person in the other car, that getting some sort of rapport with them. Don't just go straight to, you did that and we need to get this fixed.
Yeah.
It's just look at them and try and read them. Are they angry? Are they upset? Are they frightened? Are they?
Yeah.
And if you could get them talking and say and share, you say, it's a terrible dent, isn't it? Well, actually, it's not too bad. Are you going somewhere? Yes, I'm just on my way to.
Yeah.
You get them talking, and you gain rapport with them before you start to work on. Well, let's share insurances. Let's get it fixed.
Yeah.
And so don't go too quickly to problem analysis or solutions. Spend a bit more time rapport and understanding the other client. And the more, NLP is very good. Systems thinking. What we actually do is, in the jargon, is we draw a systemic model with the client of who the key players are. Or you could call it, let's just draw a diagram of who's involved. As a tool, it can help you get this rapport with the client. But anything you can do. And if you've got any sales skills or counselling skills, coaching skills, those are all totally applicable to this building rapport and getting alongside the client. So I would say do coaching, do counselling, do NLP, any of those, read psychology.
I'm so glad you mentioned coaching, because as you were talking, I was really thinking about the parallels with coaching. Because you're talking about, those sticky words that stick out when someone says pain, for example, or just a word or adjective where you go, that doesn't quite sit well. So that's obviously important to you. But then obviously you're then talking about rapport, which we know is at the center of coaching relationships. It's just really interesting as a parallel, the similarities with coaching.
Well, it's the same with sales.
Yeah.
It's the same with counselling. If you wanted to do an influencing skills course, you'd have exactly the same. You build rapport first, and then you help the client move from where they are to where they want to get to. And that's the fundamentals of my approach. You build rapport, help the client see where they are now, compare it with where they want to get to. Here the question is, what's the cost of the gap? If you don't move there, and then the final bit is, what solutions and actions can we take? So that fundamental model is the same for the sales approach, the counselling approach, the coaching approach, the influencing approach.
Yeah, it's great.
That's, I think, why it works. And it's very simple, because you need a simple model because you're under pressure.
Yes.
Yeah, the only difference with coaching is you don't do the gap analysis.
Yes.
They tend to quantify the cost to the organisation because it's an individual you're working with. The fundamental skills are the same.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So obviously, 40 years doing performance consulting?
Yes,
you would have, I'm sure, had some excellent stories and experiences in that time. What stands out to you as the best piece of work that you've worked on or that you experienced and you thought, that's incredible. That's to use a young person's term, mic drop moment. That's the best thing ever.
I was thinking, I used to run an e-learning company, and we were asked to design an e-learning company for a brewery chain for their pubs on explain on the different sorts of real ale they had, and because the clients always said, "What's this like?" and the bar staff had to say, "It's real ale. It's hoppy. It's dark. It's
yeah."
And they came and asked us for an e-learning package, and you could see it, can't you? The photos of the colour and the characteristics, quizzes on e-learning. And instead, when we did the analysis, what we turned up with was every pub handle has the picture of the beer on the front, and they clip it on when that pump is being used for that beer. And instead, for all the different pubs over the country, we changed the label, so at the back of the label it had a description of the beer.
Brilliant.
And we told the bar staff, if somebody's asking you for that beer, just read the description off the back.
Yeah.
Oh yes, it's not fruity, hoppy.
Yeah. No e-learning needed.
Yeah, and give them a small sample. So that was our solution. So I mean, e-learning is a solution. Yeah, when you do the analysis of the performance problem, you can often solve it with that was a performance aid. Just redesign the back of the class.
Yeah. It's easy,
much cheaper. Yeah.
Think of the wasted time of bar staff working through e-learning. I mean, where would they get the laptop from, for one? But
and then it would go out of date. It would just. But that's what they approached us for. We want an e-learning.
Yeah, great example. I love it. Yeah, it's.
We save them thousands and thousands.
Yeah, and also look, real ale. I do, one of the things I do miss living in Australia is real ale. We it's the wrong climate here for real ale. But anyway, that's a side story that really isn't irrelevant for what we're talking about. So look, that's a great story. I do appreciate that. That's a very good one. Is there a time at which things didn't quite go as well that you're willing to share? Because it's always people love it when things don't work, and we all get a sense of empathy.
Yes, I can tell you a recent one. We were working with a client last year. We trained their boss. She was very good. She went through the approach with all her consultants. And then she rang me up and said, our training's gone really well. We're using performance consulting. It's really good, really good. I want you to use it for another group. And what I thought we could do is just change the case study slightly.
Oh, okay.
And it was obvious she hadn't used this approach at all. She'd completely forgotten it.
Brilliant.
I can't think, look, you've just been trained and you're not using the approach.
Yeah, perfect. The paradox of that, Yeah,
and that quite often happens. I go and visit clients after a year or so and they say, oh, we've been asked to do resilience training. And I say, well, who for? And what will they be doing after they've done it? And they go, oh, yeah, you're right, we haven't asked the questions. Because we get sucked into this solutioneering. I mean, the power of solutioneering is so seductive and people like this woman I mentioned was really bright and she got sucked into people asking her to do things and her being rewarded for providing solutions. The biggest failures is when I go along and just ask one question and they go, oh yeah, we haven't asked the question.
We should have thought about this before. Yeah.
But we do it in our everyday life. You let's say, I've been looking at a new car or a new dishwasher. That's a solution. You haven't actually thought, why do we need a new car?
Yes.
Let's think through what we're using the car for. What's wrong with it?
Absolutely.
What would a new car give us? And can we? And then we may open up other solutions.
Yes.
I've been reading in Sydney, in America, that in Australia, that a large proportion of people have switched to riding their bikes now since the oil crisis. And I really need a new car.
I read that too. I don't know where these people are because the roads are chock-a-block with cars. I don't know if that's propaganda, but there's also been a massive increase in people buying EVs, which makes sense. Whether they actually follow through or not is another matter. But
But if you do think through how do we use our car or cars, and there are other options now, like getting some e-bikes and instead of thinking, I must get a more economical car.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe there are other solutions.
What are we actually using it for? But completely, and I think especially when it comes to decisions outside of organisations, it becomes even more emotional and even more less thought out. Dare I say it? Because it's emotive. Oh well, John's got an electric car and Mary's got an electric car, so I think I should definitely get an electric car. It seems to be we haven't really done that analysis of how we're going to use it, how often we're going to use it, does it really make sense for us, etc., etc. We jump straight into.
No, I'm thinking fast, isn't it? We all do it, and we're encouraged by marketing and to buy a glossy new car, whatever. And it seems someone would say the hardest thing is thinking. We don't want to think through. Hang on a minute, what are we using the cars for? How old are the kids now? Where do they have to go? Where are we taking people in cars? What do we, have our needs as a system, like a family, change? Because often you need to get a piece of paper out and think it through. I mean, that's what I do on people's personal problems, like do we need a new car? You get a piece of paper out and draw, well, how many in the family? Where do you go to in the car? What do you use the cars for? And then you can start to see your options for other solutions. But that takes a bit of time. It takes a bit of sitting down at the kitchen table with a piece of sheet of paper, thinking it through. And we avoid thinking. It's much easier to respond to the fact, you say, your neighbour next door has just got a nice EV, and you think, oh, yeah, we could get one like that.
Yeah.
We go straight to a solution because it's easier. As human beings, we jump to easy solutions.
Yeah.
And that's going back to the beginning, that's the biggest problem we have to cope with as L&D professionals and HR professionals is our clients jumping to those easy solutions and asking us to be an order taker of that solution. To resist that is one of the key things we need to do to be successful.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's a great full circle. Look, I'm conscious that obviously your professional practice has been around for a while. You still run some of those programs that you used to run?
We stopped running all face-to-face programs. We do everything virtually, and it's much better.
And do you cater to our lovely Australia, New Zealand market on times?
We do, yeah. We're working in Australia. In fact, we started before COVID. I was working in China quite a lot, in Australia. And so we started to use Zoom.
Ah, great.
And we developed the whole approach. And now we have weekly coaching sessions of 90 minutes with 3 people and a coach. And they work through real problems. And in the intervening weeks, they practice in their real life. And it's so much more effective than what I used to do. I used to fly out to China and run a 3-day workshop of 12 people with one trainer. So what happened was that if you were strong, you tended not to get much feedback. Whereas the way we do it now is over a 3-month period of continuous practice and coaching. Even the strong people get a lot of feedback to help them become even stronger. And we found it so much more effective. And I realized that the travel was the most stressful part of the job. So now I don't travel. I have all my associates, all my ex-clients working as coaches, and we have a network of associates, and we run coaching all over the world.
Fantastic.
And we use the 2 paperbacks you mentioned as the sort of background. It's very, very satisfying because we see more behavioural change using Zoom and Teams than we did when I did face-to-face.
Obviously, we've talked about the value of performance consulting. I'd say it's foundational to any L&D job, personally. I think most people would agree with me on that. If people want to get in touch or find out more about what you're providing, how do they do that?
Well, just go to my website.
Yep, which is...
Or send me an email.
Oh, yeah, and you're on LinkedIn as well.
On LinkedIn, yeah. Nigel at performanceconsult.co.uk.
Perfect.
And the other thing is don't wait. The ideas you've got here, have a look on the website and have a look at the model. Use them in your meeting today. Just when a client asks you for something, I say, right, well, who do you want that for and what would you see people doing?
Yep.
If it's successful. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just use the concepts now and then read up about it and get in touch if you want some help with some coaching.
Perfect. I love it. Try. Have a go.
Yeah. It's a mindset thing, really. It's that fundamental thing of not taking the order, but ask some questions.
Yeah. I must admit, what I try and do is, this might sound really inauthentic, but I'm really positive when someone comes to me. I think it's to stop myself from going, resilience training? What? Yeah. So instead I'm like, oh, brilliant. Yeah, sounds great. Tell me more about that. I don't know if it's inauthentic.
Yeah, well, I would try and match them with their enthusiasm.
Yes, good advice.
They say, Tom, we really need some resilience training. Say it in the same tone as them. Oh, some resilience training. Yeah. Who are you talking about?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, don't be more enthusiastic than them. Just be the same level.
True. That's good. Sage advice. And on that mention of advice, my last question is, what's the best advice you've got for folk in the L&D? And this whole conversation is littered with really good advice, but what's your one bit of advice for L&D folk that they should do first and foremost in their practice?
Well, all the things we've been talking about. But the killer question is, what would be the cost if we did nothing about this?
Yeah, beautiful.
And you can use that in your personal life as well. We need a new car. Well, hang a minute, what's the real cost if we don't get a new car?
The opportunity cost of not buying the car. Yeah.
Yeah, and someone will say, well, we won't be able to do this. And then that refocuses it on the problem rather than the solution. But in business, in organizations, if you can quantify the cost of the gap, that gives you everything you need to identify what it's worth the investment putting in to try and close that gap. And it reframes the whole thing around to a performance gap rather than a client pushing you into a solution.
Yeah.
So that's a killer question. Don't use it too early. Build rapport first.
Yeah.
You can ask it gently. You can go things like, what would happen if we didn't do resilience training?
Yeah. Great question.
Yeah, say it more like just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And that can open up a lot of performance problems.
I think
that's the killer question.
That is the killer question, and I would urge all of the listeners to have a go at using that, because that is a really good question. If you don't already, obviously. I think just taking you back to kind of summarize, we can continue being L&D managers or L&D leaders or whatever, L&D coordinators. But if we're actually driving performance, and to quote you there, understanding what it's worth, we move way beyond talking about learning and development. We talk about performance. That's a fundamental shift in our practice, and certainly a quite a different brand that people perceive from us, rather than here's a training calendar to, all right, we need to address human capital around finance or whatever it is, and the performance change is this and it's worth this to us. That's incredible. That's a real shift. So yeah, Thank you.
That's why I call my little paperback How to Be a True Business Partner by Performance Consulting.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's very satisfying when you walk out of the room as a partner. It feels good compared with walking out of a room thinking, oh no, they've just given me an order.
Yeah. Agree. Nigel, I'm conscious of time. Thank you so much for your insight and your open readiness to share your brilliant model. I am certain that if folk haven't heard of you or your model, they will be getting onto it and having a look at it, because it is, like as I said, it's fundamental to our practice in learning and development. And certainly in Australia here, we should be doing lots of this all of the time. So yeah, thank you, Nigel, for your time. Really appreciate you coming on.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you to our guest and to you for listening. If you want to boost the impact of your organisation's people development practices, I'd love to connect. You can find me at thomasbailey.co. Alternatively, you can look me up on LinkedIn.